Welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, and we are gathered with the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission here in City Hall for our monthly agenda setting session, where we get our first discussion opportunity for items that will be voted on the first Tuesday in September. We are going to have several opportunities for public input tonight. We'll have an opportunity on the consent agenda. We'll have an opportunity on each of the two planning and zoning items after the presentation from our planning director, Bruce Lonnie, and then we'll have an opportunity for public input on old and new business. Each of those public opportunities will be a 3-minute opportunity for the evening for each resident who would like to speak. There's a light in front of Ms. Armstrong's desk. It will turn green when you begin speaking. It will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and red when your 3 minutes has expired. Now, thank you for being with us here tonight. Please, if you do have public input, state your name clearly and your place of residence and the item to which you're speaking. So first order of business, would anyone like to speak to any one of the consent agenda items? Those are items 1 through 10 on our agenda tonight. Would anyone like to speak to 1 through 10? Consent agenda items will be handled by a single vote at our voting meeting in September. All right. Would any commissioner like to remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion?
I just wanted to ask a question on item number 5, and then we can put it back on.
All right. 5, Commissioner Myers, I've got it.
Yeah. Ditto, Karen Myers.
All right.
I just have a question about item number 5.
All right. Any additional ones? All right. So we'll move 5 to discussion, at least for the moment. All right. I'm going to go ahead and come sit next to Manager Jones so we can get our presentation about each of the two planning and zoning items. Following each presentation, there will be an opportunity for public input and then commission discussion. Bruce Lonnie, not only a skilled planning professional, but a man of many computer peripherals. Lights, camera, action. All right, we have 2 planning and zoning items tonight. The first is 215 Shady Brook Drive. Bruce, take it away.
Very good, thank you. The rezone request occurred at the August Planning Commission meeting for 215 Shady Brook Drive. This is request zone 2024-05 and 0927. The nature of the request is to rezone a property that is currently RS8, a single-family zoning classification that's relatively high density, to RM1, a little more density, but multifamily is allowed in RM1. As submitted, it was a non-binding concept plan, although the applicant did offer to make the plan binding. They felt comfortable with that. Some of the issues were looking at a connection through the Willow Mist neighborhood through Seagraves Drive. Seagraves Drive is interesting because the portion just off of Lexington Road is public, but after you cross the creek, it becomes private. And also a proposed future connection through the Lakewood plan development that is to the south of the subject property. The plan that was prepared showed 60 detached dwellings, although that's not the full complement of density that would be possible if the rezone were approved. And honestly, it's less density than what the RS8 would allow for by right. They show a clubhouse, play area, and an overlook, as well as a nature trail that could offer potential opportunity for greenway connection. Interesting thing about this, because it is a straight rezone and not a PD or a special use like you sometimes see, there was a variance that was requested to help manage this. There, is that better? Yeah. So the hearings board in July, approved a variance for a single access point for a multifamily project. So thinking preemptively, thinking about if this rezone were to be approved, there is now a variance that has been approved for the property to allow a single point of access Code normally would ask for 2 points of access if you're generating 250 trips a day. Just to get oriented with the site, here's an aerial view. It is a wooded site, heavily wooded site, lots of topography on the property. It is essentially landlocked, even though you see Shady Brook Drive connecting to the north. There is a large ravine where there is a creek, and that is limiting access considerably. And to the east, you have seed graves in that loop. That'll come up as we talk about the proposed plan. Here's another view looking south, and you can see Deacle Lake off on the right-hand side of the screen. Helps you orient. Lexington Road is at the bottom of the screen. So future land use-wise, what they're asking for is consistent with the traditional neighborhood future land use category that's on the property. This view cleans up the understanding of how it is somewhat landlocked. Even though Shady Brook Drive stops right at the creek, that creek is very difficult to cross. And our Transportation and Public Works Department had advised the applicant that they were not interested in having a public bridge built, providing an interconnection. And Transportation and Public Works has supported the request and the variance request to provide access to Seagraves Drive, but with a condition, and we will get to that. The rezone would take this from RS8 to RM1 without condition, without any kind of binding opportunity. And then here's the plan as submitted, and what you'll see at the bottom of the screen, you see a cul-de-sac and you see an interconnection off of Seagraves. On the left-hand side of that view is the primary access, the single point of access into this development. There is a minor point of access coming off the cul-de-sac on the right-hand side. That is primarily for emergency access, ambulance, fire and emergency response. But the real reason this is a single point of access, and I'll go back to this view to demonstrate, if you see on Seagraves Drive, right before it splits and goes around that loop, there is that creek. And from that point down, that is where the public right-of-way ends. So for this proposed development, that is their lone connection out to Lexington Road. So that is the single point of access. No matter how many driveways you have onto Seagraves Drive, there is only one point of access out to Lexington Road using the public portion of Seagraves Drive. So that's why that is truly the single point of access. The other thing to note, two things to note from the site plan, the area circled in red is a potential future interconnection to Lakewood. The Lakewood PD is a long time coming, and full development of this is going to take a while. But it is anticipated, and on the approved PD, there is an alignment in this location for an interconnection. But that would be in the last phase of the Lakewood development as it's currently approved. The area shaded in green is where you would see the trail. The applicant has proposed a trail facility in that location as a concept, and I believe that's going to be a point of discussion as we look at the Greenway Network Plan, which is here. So this view of the Greenway Network Plan, those blue lines on the map, are the Greenway Network Plan as represented on the Open Data Portal. They align with what's in the Greenway Network Plan as amended in 2021. I think it was March of 2021 that y'all saw it. The area in kind of lime green up there is the development site, and that blue line, as you can see, comes across the northern edge following more or less the creek bottom. The applicant has shown interest in tying on, but there is nothing in the plan per se that ties this to any kind of standards with the Greenway. But they've certainly been open to discussing it. So the summary analysis of the request is what has been shown is partially compatible with the comp plan. It does provide some infill on an otherwise tough site that has been zoned and anticipated in future land use to be housing. Adding to our housing supply is an ongoing challenge, and this proposal would do that. It is compatible with the future land use map, and relief was secured for that second point of access by asking for the variance from the hearings board. So the Planning Commission recommendation is approval with conditions, and the two conditions are as follows. that the voluntary binding plan shall only be used for reference and not be included as part of the approval of the rezone request. Part of the reason why that was decided by the Planning Commission was in response to the fact that the topography out there is pretty severe. And the plan, even though it's really thorough, it is not final engineering. So in all likelihood, things are going to shift as that actual engineering takes place to figure out how to do the development, how to get the land disturbance activity permit issued. So to be bound to something that is inevitably going to bend and twist, and we don't really know which ways it's going to go, the recommendation was to not bind the plan. Second condition, any access through a private roadway that requires recording of an adequate easement agreement be done with the understanding that that should be for the entirety of Seagraves Drive, so that there isn't a moment on that private drive that can be shut down that would restrict access to this development, especially given the density that's proposed. And on these two conditions, the applicant was amenable. So with that, Planning Commission recommendation is approval with conditions, and happy to answer any questions you might have when the time's ready.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it. All right, I want to get any public input on this. Is there anyone here to speak to this project? Good evening.
I'm happy to speak. My name's Ken Bell, Bell & Company, and we prepared the rezone concept plan that you are looking at and going to be acting on very soon. Mr. Kittle, who is the owner of the property, is also here. We didn't really come to speak. We came just to observe and answer any questions that you might have. But I will go ahead and tell you, since I have this opportunity, that everything that you see in green is in some type of environmental corridor already. And in the rezone report that we submitted with this plan, we stipulated, the owner stipulated, that he would be willing to dedicate an easement through a portion of that area to accommodate the trail system. So, and you can see we're trying to also reserve a reasonably abundant amount of undisturbed area because outside of that green area, because everything that we're saving is mature hardwoods from that road that is horizontal with the two, with the turn and the circle. Those are all mature, from there down to the creek and beyond is all mature hardwoods and beautiful and certainly worth saving. So other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here tonight who'd like to speak to this proposal? Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Ronnie Kittle. I live at 418 Oakwood Drive in Bogart, and I'm the owner of Seagraves Drive, Willamette, and I've had it for 40 years. So I decided I would buy this property to protect the Willamette property. And when I went in there to ask Ken about, rezoning it, the main reason we wanted to rezone it is we wanted to make it 60 cottages, houses, and we want to be able to move the houses left to right 15, 20 feet either way if we can save a tree here or there. So basically the red circle you see there is going to the Deacle property, and that property, of course, opens up on the Barnett Shows Road. So I think that the way the concept is now, we just have a vision that we're going to make this really, really nice unit development of houses.
Thank you, Mr. Kittle. I
Okay.
appreciate it. Anyone else here to speak to this project? All right, we'll come for a commission discussion. This is in District 3.
Taylor?
Hey.
Commissioner Taylor?
Sorry.
It's okay. Any input on the plan?
No input. Bruce educated me a little bit earlier. I'm fine.
Others, Commissioner Link?
Yeah, this is a gorgeous piece of property. I've actually walked it once upon a time, and it's really beautiful. That stream has kind of rocky little waterfalls and stuff. And I know there's been an intention to develop it into appropriate housing for a while. And from what I can tell, that upzoning to RM from single family allows for that flexibility to squish the housing together to conserve as much of the mature hardwoods as possible. Is that correct? And it also allows more density in an area that, could definitely use it. So I think it's a smart way of doing it. And I think the connection to Lakewood could really help, build a cohesive community out there. Then Deagle Lake's beautiful. I used to swim in it back in the day.
Any other swimmers? Commissioner Myers?
Well, I haven't been in the lake, but, maybe in
Uh-huh.
future. Though, just I'm going to ask just educate me one. On this one with the way it's, the cottages, could this be built, if we're changing the zoning here? I know the developer worked, or the owner actually talked to the neighbors over in Shady Brook and really worked with them, which I totally appreciate there. But let's say something happens and we rezone this, could it come in and be rezoned with a whole lot more density? Or is the topography such that that wouldn't be able to happen, or the roads, or, what would keep that from happening?
Well, it is a straight rezone.
Yeah.
And so without a binding plan, without something that's setting some guardrails on any sort of change, the full benefit of RM1 density and design standards would be available if the rezone was approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, I wanted to talk about, and I've talked to Mr. Kettle about this, is that looking again here at the pathway, this is right, as you said, on that Greenway plan as well, but that pathway on the one from the Deagle property, which is the developer, it's a development, I think it's called the Shoals, and it's our, anyway, it's a very large development that we're going to be seeing. It's already had one pass through the planning department, and it has its path, that it's going to be a continuation of the one from Carriage Lane, and it goes, and it ends right there where that circle is, right? And then later tonight, we're going to be looking at the Lexington Road projects, and included in there is a Greenway corridor connection from Lexington Road over to the Firefly. And so, I saw when you showed that, could you go back to that Greenway map thing? That was helpful. Because I see there's two, and, in fact, the one we're looking at is really, where that intersection is. I can't point over there, but that's the one we're going to be looking at tonight. And the line that comes right across is right through Atlas Apartments, right? Where we didn't have, I don't think we have any agreement or right-of-way of anything here. So I'm concerned about just putting some language in here, and Mr. Kettle seems open to this, to somehow make it so that if we go back to that other picture, that we can have the right-of-way set aside for some or plans, a requirement to look in that and plan that with that right-of-way without disturbing what the cottage plan that he has. And so we're basically talking about two pieces of Greenway, and this is sort of one piece in between. I just want to make sure all the lines line up. So the mayor was suggesting some language to me before on that. Mr. Kettle is opening, so I want to know how to advise us moving forward, or what I would need to put into this to make sure those things line up.
Sure. Staff can work with you on developing some language. My thought would be that because the Greenway Network Plan is not overly prescriptive, it's kind of an
Right.
approximation of a route, but this lot is very much a part of a planned connection. In whatever alignment it turns out to be, I think this lot's going to be critical. So if there was a willingness and appetite to make sure that this gets built into this, perhaps it's working with leisure services staff, planning staff, and the applicant, to make sure that there's flexibility to put it in, and that alignment should follow and be coordinated with the Lakewood development. I think this proposal, and Mr. Bell could probably speak to this, was trying to work with the topography. If you come in at that interconnection from the Lakewood property, you're going to have to go down a pretty steep grade to connect to the other portion of alignment along the creek. So trying to avoid that kind of drop, having switchbacks, that tends to make for more disturbance, and that's not what we want with trails usually is, and that's expensive as well.
Yeah, I know
So-
the previous owner of the property was putting something that really brought the greenway onto one of those roads and came out on, that you'd then come out on Seagraves, which of course is a private road, but as someone who might be using it, that would make sense and be level and not disturb this area, which you might want to put a footpath in there, just a little footpath rather than the wide greenway kind of multi-use path. So anyway, we could work forward with some language, assuming Commissioner Taylor's good with this and the owner's good with this. I'd like to work with all the partners involved to make sure we don't lose this opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's a way to word a condition of approval that an interconnection and a facility that would match Greenway standards be provided through the development at an alignment to be determined in coordination with the Lakewood PD amendment that we're likely to see. That way we'll make sure we're actually butting up the facilities properly. But we can,
Right.
crafting that right here, right now, I'm not sure
Yeah, I don't want to craft
exactly
it
what the
right
words
now.
would be.
Yeah.
But I think there's an opportunity.
And I also do want to be fair to the landowner and the developer here as well. I know that the mayor has talked to the other day about the possibility of using TAD monies, finishing some of the paths along the Lexington corridor and such. And I'm not sure if that's something that will go forward not, or with T-Splost, to make sure we can get this all connected, all the Lego parts together. Does that sound good, developer? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Taylor?
Bruce, could you speak a little bit to the topography of where the actual houses are going to be? Like how steep it is. Lose my train of thought. Because of Seagraves being only one way in and one way out, we spoke about an easement today, correct?
Yes.
So that, God forbid, a tree falls, everyone isn't trapped in. I think, speaking for the residents on Shady Brooks, who is for it, unless they would really like the plan to be binding, but I understand that this is just for reference only. I lost my thought, Bruce.
Topography.
As far as the topography goes, that area where Mr. Bell has designed the footprints of the buildings, none of this site's easy, but that is the easiest portion to develop and not have to clear, as he said, and not have to do really aggressive grading. If you look, to give you a reference point, if you see the run of numbers coming off of that top row of cottages, it's about a 75-foot drop down to the creek from the back of those lots. And then towards the middle of the site, I think it goes up another 10, 15 feet. So really quickly, in some sections, I think you're approaching up close to 100 feet of drop across the site. So that's expensive. It's pretty radical grading to deal with. And so, to Commissioner Link's point about the rezone to RM1, that allows the flexibility to not have to do lots, to concentrate your development. You can really get density in a smaller spot and minimize your footprint. And that's really to the advantage of everybody. So it does put the development kind of sitting next to Seagraves Drive's residents, more so than not. But that's also better for access.
And also, we also spoke about because the plan isn't binding, and if there is a rezone, that this property could be used for anything other than what this plan says it, correct? and I think that was one of the issues for the Shady Brook community, because they are right beside Athens, and so they're, razzled by the Atlas, and then this could possibly not be what we're discussing today. It could possibly be Atlas times 10. And so that's or if not Atlas times 10, just something that's not this, or that's
RM1 zoning.
beneficial to the area, which is their really main concern. So how would we go about that? Would we still just, is it still just a yes or no vote for the rezone, and then we kind of pray that it turns into this and not into another Atlas?
You certainly have the latitude to introduce conditions of approval, and this may be a good question for Mr. Bell, but they have proposed 60 units. One possible condition would be to condition it to 60 units. In whatever arrangement makes sense for the grading, that sets a cap on what can occur. You could also, there was some representative architecture that was provided. It's fairly low-rise architecture. So to cap the development at the height of the buildings that were proposed might also be something that helps give some assurance about the scale, the mass of the development. That's absolutely within y'all's purview to do something like that.
I think the owner wanted to.
Patrick?
So in RM1, the height density can be similar to a 4-story apartment complex or a quadruplex or three-story. Okay. Thank you.
That's why kind of the height limit as a condition would be sort of an operative lever to use. Commissioner Wood?
Yeah, so the RM1 zoning is the lowest multifamily zoning, which only allows 16 bedrooms per acre. That's often less dense than your single-family zones when you're allowed to build a 4-bedroom house on existing lots. What is the acreage of this lot?
It's a little over 23 acres.
So 16 at 23 acres
Yeah,
is,
it's 300 and change. Total number of
and this is
bedrooms.
proposing 60 units?
60 units, I believe, with a mix of bedrooms.
So 2 and 3 bedrooms.
So netting out to about 3 structures an acre.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see the possibility of, I mean, with this topography. But yeah, I think restrictions on height would be something that could help alleviate those concerns. I mean, I know we initiated something like that in, on Bray Street when I worked with the developer there. So I mean, I'd be happy to work to help you figure that out.
Commissioner Thornton?
Yeah, units.
My question is not about this project directly, but I've talked it over with the mayor and some other commissioners. I just struggle all the time doing rezoning while we are in the land use plan. And we're getting a flood of rezoning requests. And I also have noticed, since I came on the commissioner, it looks like we're moving away from binding plans. It looks like there's more direction on non-binding plans. Is that the way the planning department is trying to move in the direction? It seems like the rezoning, when I first came on the commission, binding, that's what I heard. And now it seems that that is not as significant for develop. So is that a new, because I don't want to not support a good plan, because I'm thinking we're still doing it the way it was 8 years ago. So is this a new direction that the planning department, especially when it's the straight rezones?
I think we've had discussion in the last couple years with designers about what the code lets you do And there's not always a need for a binding plan to produce the result that they're looking for. It's always on the table for this body to want to see that. But with a straight rezone request, sometimes it's not necessary to match the future land use goals. It's not necessary to match the comprehensive plan. And we've had a couple instances lately where the applicant didn't feel it was necessary to have a binding plan in order to get the job done on what they wanted to do. They weren't introducing something that needed flexibility to that extent.
And I guess my thought is that works good now, today, next week. My concerns are 5, 10 years down the road. And I have seen so many things flip. This is flipped, actually, the rezoning and non-binding. So we're not just making decisions for the next few years. We're making long-term decisions. And even though things change, I'm just trying to be more cognizant that we're doing something that is not a problem later on down the road. I have nothing against this plan whatsoever, sirs, nothing at all. This is in general. But I have noticed that we are seeing more non-binding, rezone, straight, and if that's the way we're going to go, if that's our new way, then I think that this commission needs to know what the planning department is thinking and why, so that we do not sound like we're being obstructionist to something better.
Any others? All right, we have one other zoning-related request. We're going to move on to that, and that is 1580 and 1590 Lexington Road. This is also in District 3.
Okay, just down the street. Just down the street. Special use permit, 2023-12-2301. This one's been kind of a long time coming in the process. We saw this come into our office in December, hence the 12 in the record number. And the development group has looked at some options along the way. They did have to meet with the airport authority, and that's the reason why this is coming to you. Otherwise, everything they're asking for is really approvable by right in the commercial general zone, which is the zoning on the property. But this is in the airport overlay, so it does require special use permit approval. So the request is for a special use permit for a restaurant in the airport overlay. Any kind of land use that has any kind of congregating of people tends to get this level of scrutiny to ensure safety and to not inhibit the operation of the airport. What they're asking for specifically is to have a quick service food restaurant attached to a convenience store at the site. The convenience store that's there now is going to get redeveloped. Some of you all may remember that there used to be a Brewster's ice cream here back when the theater was first developed. So it's kind of revisiting that idea, but attaching to the building that's out there. 2 variances were requested, and with the special use you can do that. One is a reduction in the required percentage of tree canopy coverage. They wanted to go from 40% that's typically required in the zone to 35%. And a reduction in the required percentage of landscaped area as required by code. They want to go from 20% to 13%. And as you can see from the aerial view, that request is really an attempt to reflect the existing conditions on the site. There's a good bit of paving out here. And much of that development occurred prior to this current version of code that we have in place. So this is kind of a legacy situation where we have more paving than we would normally see if this were being developed for the first time. Here you can see the alignment with the Winterville Road and out in front of the movie theater. The current future land use is general business. That is not changing. Current zoning is commercial general. That is not changing. This would just put a special use on top of the 2 parcels in question, 1580 and 1590 Lexington Road. And then here is the site plan that's coming in. With a special use, this would be binding. And what they've shown on here, in addition to the reduction in tree canopy and the reduction in landscaped area, they are showing new plantings. So you're seeing new trees on that northern edge along the Lexington Road right-of-way. You're seeing some restored plantings, I'd like to say, because there used to be trees out there and they just kind of went away. So we're getting some trees back. You're also getting pervious paving for those spaces that are out towards Lexington Road, which will help with stormwater. There's a lot of sheet drainage here, so that's going to be beneficial. And the restaurant is on the eastern end of the building, and the convenience store would be on the west. All the interconnections into and out of the driveways serving the theater and out to Lexington Road would remain unchanged. Representative architecture, this would be binding, but there you can see on the bottom of the screen what you would be viewing from Lexington Road. The summary analysis of the request is that this is compatible with the comprehensive plan, where the focus is on corridor redevelopment, trying to look at gateways and other important corridors and maximize use of those. Compatible with the future land use map and the zoning map, as you've seen. The airport authority approved it unanimously. And the project also meets all of the special use permit required criteria. So, Planning Commission's recommendation was approval of the special use, as well as approval of the requested variances, finding that they were the minimum necessary to make this work. So it was essentially approved as submitted. And that's the end of the staff report.
All right, is there anyone here tonight to speak to this project? All right, this is also in District 3, Commissioner Taylor.
Well, I'm familiar with the gas station, and I remember when it was Brewster. So to see something go in that spot where food trucks utilize now and again, to see it blossom into this, I'm excited. And then the loop is coming, the Greenway, so you can get there by feet or tires.
Anyone else? Patrick?
East Side, rise up. I'm excited about this. I like the additional tree canopy, the layout, and it is a growing area, like Commissioner Taylor has stated, so it will be a great addition to the B&B Theater and the gas station, and with the completion of the loop. So and I love chicken, so I'm excited.
Commissioner Wright?
I applaud that getting a variance in our new canopy stuff without them asking to not at all. I think this was a good compromise. I'm glad that the Planning Commission saw that as well. Some of the existing lots inside the loop on Oconee are challenging, and there's been some stalls in developing them because of the avalanche of changes that they would have to do. So I think we have to accept what's there, and as the way you said, blossom. We're going to blossom it and make it look a little bit better, even though it's an existing one. So, yep, I support it.
All right, any others? All right, Bruce, thank you a ton. I appreciate it. I know we'll see you more in future months. I looked at the Planning Commission agenda for this coming month. I think we'll have a busy couple of months coming up. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to relocate back to
Take a break, a quick break, since we've been here since 5.
Sure. Quick break.
Instead of 7.
On it, and we're going to go ahead and pick up with old and new business. First item of business is public input on old and new business. And so that is item 5, and then items 13 through 28. 5 and 13 through 28. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to any of those items? All right, seeing none, we're going to come to the commission for discussion, beginning with item 5. And 5 was an item that Commissioners Myers and Davenport wanted to have some input on. So I'll begin with you, Commissioners Myers.
Yeah, I was just, I'm good with this. I did ask our interim manager, Jones, just to check out these pedestrian, it says pedestrian hybrid beacons at 2 different places on Lexington Road Hughes and or Marbury Street, and then across from the jail. Are those going to also have residential, I'm not residential islands, I don't want island, are they going to have pedestrian islands? Are they going to be refuge islands in the middle, or is it just the beacon?
Well, they should be paired with the beacon, so it's our understanding that for right now, we're scoping out refuge islands with additional traffic control.
Right.
Meaning the beacons.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure we have those refuge islands, because it's such a big expanse. There's no way, even if there was a beacon, that I want to be going across there. And again, I spent a bunch of time like looking over this yesterday, getting all of those different projects with the Lexington Road, and I would concur with something that the mayor suggested as well. The last stretch that would be between basically Lowe's and where this little multi-use path goes over to the Firefly. That would be on that side. There would not be any sort of sidewalk multi-use paths over there. So I am interested in us making sure that's either a T-Splosh project or finishing that up and get that done as well. So that's just something I want to consider as we're moving forward.
Commissioner Davenport?
So my question, it was asked at our last meeting about the what happened to the Winterville Road. Even though we approved the concept plan, we didn't have a bucket of funds for it, and it would be a great connectivity to Beaver Dam Road. I was just wondering why that project was not a part of this project.
You're asking about the multi-use path?
Multi-use path
Up
on-
Cherokee Road toward Beaver Dam?
Commissioner Davenport, let me get back to you on that one.
Alright.
And just for history's sake, there was an approved concept plan, but I believe the initial recommendation
Was TAD.
out of the TAD advisory group was not to expend the funds. Obviously, significant funds have emerged in the pot since that decision was made. Ultimately, of course, it is the decision of the commission to expend TAD funds. You take recommendations from recommending bodies, but you make the ultimate decision, so. Commissioner Myers?
Following up on that, I thought that what project, you're talking about the Cherokee Road project, right? And that was something that was approved, the design, before I joined the commission. But that was part of the bike pedestrian bucket, one of those original projects. So I guess really what you're looking for is a status report on that. Is it whether or not there is actually funding? And you're saying there isn't.
My recollection is that it was a project that would have outstripped the funds that were available in that bucket. But anyhow, I think staff will probably need
Yes,
to
you-
follow up just to verify that.
At the September work session, we'll be coming to you with the progress on Cherokee Road.
Okay.
All right. Do y'all want to put this back on consent and just get a staff report?
Yeah, that's,
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. 5 is going back on consent. All right, moving forward to number 13. This is the fiscal year 26 to 30 consolidated plan goals for CDBG and home funds that flow to us from Housing and Urban Development. We, of course, had a recent work session on this. This could go on consent if you would like. All right, we're going to put 13 on consent. All right, item 14 is the vendor registration software for the business inclusion policy, kind of as discussed recently in GOC.
Consent, we've been talking about this for some years, and we finally added some money to get in a vendor, so let's move it to consent, hopefully.
All right,
Maybe not.
No, I just, perhaps you can then answer the
Commissioner
question
Myers?
I had on it. Because I just wanted to understand this so I could explain it or understand it myself, and that is that this software will widen opportunities for minority and women business-owned registration participation. How is that software doing that? Does anyone, I mean, is that an easy explanation?
And that I can't explain.
Okay. I was just curious about that.
It's going to help us create a database. It's going to help us identify those that are already certified, and then help us identify those that we can help get certified.
Okay, so it's not, and it will be a database for all of the vendors that we can then use for?
Ultimately, that's what the goal is, to make sure
Okay.
that all of our MWB contractors, subcontractors are within this database.
Okay. Thank you.
any further questions? All right, so 14 is going to consent. 15 is involving the private pump station in Force Main at 4555 Lexington Road. This is an approved subdivision that this body saw a couple of years ago.
So, I would like to hold this off for consent to learn more. So we did a rezone, it was a rezone and a plan development. The plan development didn't go through. So now this new project is gonna increase the density of what we originally thought we had approved, but because we did the rezone, it's by right now, and they need a pump station. But it's similar to the pump station that is next door at the cottage, so I don't see a real issue, but I would like to just, in the next 2 weeks, talk to the residents next door, because they do add a huge buffer, a much bigger buffer than the original proposal, but they're increasing the density of the housing, so I'd just like to speak with the neighbors next door.
All right, so Commissioner Davenport's going to do some follow-up. Commissioner Thornton?
I actually was going to ask it to be pulled, but when I saw it was Lexington Road, I'm like, that's not my area. But the concept is the same as when we do rezoning and one piece passes and something else doesn't. It puts us in a kind of this was exactly what I was trying to explain, but I'm glad you're pulling off, and hopefully you get some good information that we can support it.
All right. We're going to move on. Item 16 is the T-Splost Award to the lowest bidder for construction project of the next segment of the Firefly Trail.
Yeah.
Consent?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
16.
This is the award of
Oh, yeah.
construction.
Off consent. I have no issue with this one, because it does leaves out the section 3 that I have major concerns with while they work on the, easement portion, but, I do hear some rumblings and concerns from residents, up Spring Valley Road who would just like somebody to talk to them. So hold that off for consent as well.
All right, so leave this one off consent. All right, anyone else? All right, moving on to 17. 17 is a building systems and equipment efficiency project. That's part of our SPLOST 2020 Project 11, associated with energy efficiency work. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, the only question I have about this is the cultural affairs, and seems to, well, first of all, my big question is, I'd like the manager to explain the difference between this and the following agenda item. It seems like they're related, but the Cultural Affairs Commission recommended that public art be a part of this project, and staff recommended not. And I can understand how some aspects of it certainly wouldn't qualify, but I would like to see, the things like Memorial Park cost of building the library qualify for some of those public art funds and include funds. And it's not a lot of funds, and I feel like when you have those very small projects, that's the opportunity for smaller local artists who have not become real established in large public art projects to get into our public art program. So I would be interested in concocting a CDO that directed that those projects that do seem to qualify be included for public art.
Well, so to answer your question about the difference between 10 and 11, 10 is primarily addressing individual systems within a building, and it really aligns well with our capital reinvestment in our buildings. So for example, it's going to be things like HVAC systems, hot water heating, and so on. In that case, it pays the difference between what we would normally invest and then the additional expense. 11 is a little more holistic, so it's typically going to be based off of an energy audit, and it's going to open the door for deeper dives on things that we don't typically fund. So additional insulation, weather sealing, things of that nature. When it comes to public arts, certainly you could CDO and direct whatever you feel compelled to. What I would caution you is that the majority of this equipment is capital equipment, so it's similar to like a solar electric system, and most of it is not seen. It is usually in supply closets or
Okay.
tucked away by dumpsters, things of that nature.
I guess there could be art on that electrical panel.
We see it.
Commissioner Myers?
I do have a question, yeah. I guess that difference there between, for example, if it was doing it in my house, where I got a water pump that's in part of the system, that would be under 17, but where I went in and added more insulation, that would be under 18, right? But on these things, it says, and I looked at the evaluation criteria, which hopefully someone else will understand better, but once approved, central services and sustainability staff will evaluate ACC buildings and equipment and build a recommended priority replacement list. So is the plan to go through all our buildings and rank stuff and then decide how to spend it? That seems like a lot.
So yes and no. A couple things will happen. First, on the equipment side, we have a regular life cycle program every year that we look at what is due by age and condition. And then the next question is what additional efficiency equipment might be available if we install it. When you look at the kind of holistic building energy retrofit side, that information is best done with energy audits. And right now, the sustainability department has got a procurement out for on-call along with central services. So we're actually going to have a group on staff that can go do a full energy audit on a building. And from there, we'll get energy conservation measures. So they'll tell us recommended practices to improve the building and then even estimates of what that cost and payback would be. And so are we going to do all of them? Maybe eventually. What also is happening is the sustainability department is working on their energy software where they're actually monitoring how much energy is going into a building, what is the cost of that. So what we're going to look for is the inefficient and the older buildings first, move through that low-hanging fruit, and then at that point we'll assess kind of what those tier 2 and tier 3 buildings might look like.
And so once we approve this, and the money that's associated with it, it's all just going to happen. It's not going to come back because these will be smaller, like we're not going to be improving more insulation for one building because the price would be so low there, so, okay.
That's correct. And there was a building that this body approved we acquire a few months ago, 440 College Avenue, that we're currently renovating. We actually already have energy audits on hand, so we have some ideas where investments could be made if this money is available, but each individual item would not come back for consideration.
And I liked how you had, at least in the second one, renovations must include upgrades and additions needed to be able to verify, monitor, and evaluate energy use. So there's a check on the other end of that these investments are actually paying off in terms of energy savings. Great.
All right, so any more questions about either 17 or 18, since they're somewhat conjoined?
Consent.
I'm interested in crafting a CDO, I think, for 17, so I'd like to leave that off.
All right, 17 is it okay if 18 is on consent?
Yeah.
All right, 18 is going to consent. All right, 19 is title only as we hunt for the ultimate location of the East Side Library, which everybody's very excited about. 20 is the bridge planning and feasibility study design contract, so that we prepare to replace some of our older bridges with more contemporary functional models.
Oh, consent, please.
Everybody okay with consent there? Lovely. All right. 21 is a budget adjustment to cover some fiscal year-end budget balances from FY '24, and you can see those enumerated in the agenda report. Mr. Davenport?
Consent, but can staff go over that, like, so if department has extra money, it goes back into the general fund, or it goes to the department? Can you just go over that for me real quick?
Capital funds roll over, operating funds do not, generally speaking. What you might see and what you are seeing is that it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be savings, because if there's savings from one department and there's overages on others, we have to make up those overages. So that's what's happening here. You see all the overtime, we're making up overages.
Okay.
Any further questions about that?
Consent.
Consent?
Consent.
All right. 21 is consent. All right, 22 is an amendment to our neighborhood leaders contract to cover salary increases and a few peripheral costs in a total of $38,000 on a contract of about $1.1 million.
I'll consent.
I'll pull it. I would like to pull it.
Okay. Well, any input or questions?
Because we talked about this in our budget, and it didn't make it into the budget. So I'm just wondering, how did it get to?
Because it
Am I
was at the
correct?
last
'Cause-
minute.
This came very late.
Okay.
After the CDO for the budget had already been composed. And so I agreed that we would put this on a subsequent cycle, but we weren't going to do it on the fly in June.
So we need more time.
I need more time, and I don't want to hold up the meeting tonight, but I don't remember, the history of the neighborhood leaders came out of our COVID money, out of the original prosperity package. And the conditions also were that we were going to hire 2 grant writers to help sustain the neighborhood leaders. And that did not happen. And I think that I have great neighborhood leaders, period. Great. But how this became part of the general budget, and now it's going to increase our budget later on, I would just like to re-examine how the neighborhood leaders is funded, because this was not the original plan. And I did talk to Manager Williams before he was here, so just, if we could pull it off, maybe I can get some answers on how we're going to continuously support this.
And just as a means of clarity, managers in our Housing and Community Development Department, we do have grant writers that are currently embedded in the org chart.
So the grant writers are not solely grant writers. They have multiple dual positions, if you will, dual roles. But yes, they are embedded in the org chart.
But that is not what we voted on in whatever year that was. So if it's embedded, it goes back to what I was mentioning about planning department. If there's changes in staff and their direction, let us know so we can be aware. So if this is going to be different, if we're not funding what we voted on, just let us know, then we can go from there.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you would just pull that, I appreciate it.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, looking through the agenda report, it refers to the supplement that or the funding that we did last September for the neighborhood leaders. And it says in there that that it would incorporate the following additional provisions. and there's one about quarterly reports, there's one about surveys to the getting more input through the neighborhood leaders to get our surveys out to people in the community. There's one about the neighborhood leaders reaching out to the commission. There's one actually about grant opportunities and shall revisit and, oh, look, it says shall revisit and may revise the neighborhood leader the funding. So, but on the other ones, I'd like to know what the follow-up has been on that, because I'm not, I mean, I went and looked and did I know I can look online at the portal, but I thought we were gonna be getting quarterly reports, something sort of alerted to us rather than we're going on there. So I want to see how we have followed up or not followed up, or the Neighborhood Leaders Program has followed up with these additional provisions that we added last year. And likewise on the grant, if we have people with a grant position, it would be good to know what percentage of time they're spending on grants. I know in the audit office, where we're looking at the PSCOB, the audit committee has been asking, every month when we're meeting, like, how many hours are you spending on PSCOB? So I know there's a way to evaluate and find out. They might be very valid things that the grant people are working on, but there may need to be a change in what we're funding or adding another position. So it'd be good to know how much actual time is spent on grant writing.
So I just want to make sure we get the correct answer for you. So 2 different questions. You want to report on what the neighborhood leaders have been up to, because they should be submitting quarterly reports.
And also, there's including shall explore grant writing opportunities. And, I guess I just would like a response from the Neighborhood Leader Program on the items that we added on last year when we voted on this.
Certainly.
Just one more thing. So
Commissioner Davenport.
Just a concern from my colleagues is, what if the library, because they didn't get their ask, and they came back to us and said, hey, we want the other difference for, we want to be put on the agenda for the difference that we didn't get. And I just, I don't know if this happened in the past, but I just would hate to set an example, not a precedent, for other agencies to request middle year funding for cost of living adjustments.
Commissioner Thornton.
I would like, Carol, because I missed it when I was scrolling, my computer still. What was that last part? Your voice went down a little bit when you were saying revisit the.
Well, I was reading I was reading what in the agenda report, it mentions all of the additional provisions we were including with the funding from last year. And I was reading through, and then I got to E, and it was the mayor and commission shall revisit and may revise the Neighborhood Leaders Program funding source for 2024 budget, which seems to be probably having brought the same point up last year. So I was just looking at what we said, the conditions we put on the funding last year. So.
All right, we will follow up. All right, item 23 is construction of the landfill Phase 5, cells 2A and B, and this is a construction award.
Consent?
Consent.
All right, 23 is consent. All right, 24 is the contract award for professional services and equipment for the real-time crime center, which we've discussed.
Consent.
All right, 24 is consent. All right, 25 is the award of contract for public safety vehicle upfitting, sort of clarifying or streamlining our vehicle acquisition.
Consent. Right, does it have all the information?
Does.
Okay.
25 is consent. 26 is title only. We, of course, discussed at our June work session that we would have a sort of recapture policy for those agencies who weren't expending our ARPA funds so that we could direct those funds ahead of the 2026 deadline.
I'm going to ask to pull that because there's a question.
Well,
that-
it's got to stay off because
Oh,
we don't
okay,
have
title, okay.
we don't have a.
But I do have
deck
a
in front of
question
us.
for the manager.
Yes, ma'am.
Later. I'll give it to you later.
All right, 27 is the scope of services for the Business Development Workforce Support Funding Plan. And I know commissioners are working on that. And of course, there was a deadline for those agencies to submit their scope of services.
August 16th,
Yeah, well, we
27.
don't have anything to look.
Well,
No.
we need to wait since we
No.
don't have a packet. And then 28 is just the ultimate allocation of the remainder of our ARPA funds. And of course, we're gathering some additional information on those commission priorities, just so that you know the scale of opportunity within each one of those categories. All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Taylor and second from Commissioner Wright. All in favor of adjourning? Any opposed? All right, everyone, it's 7:25 on August 20th. Hope you have a great night.